everyone, uh, here live on Zoom and on YouTube later, watching the recording. This is episode 6 of the MINDWATCH series, which has been a very interesting experiment so far. And the idea of this series of conversations started off essentially from a shared curiosity between Ashok and myself to look at what would it mean to model metacognition or attempt to model it, given that we keep falling off the wagon even as we do it. So, yeah, that's how this experiment started, and we've been attempting to look at how do we metacognitively hold conversations pertaining to various themes that are related to our world as it is right now. So that's the background behind these conversations. And so far, the structure of it has been such that Ashok and I tend to be in conversation with each other in about the first 50 to 60 minutes of this space. And then we open it up to your questions. For those of you who are here live, we open it up to engaging with your questions and reflections as well. And of course, even as we are in conversation in the initial part of it, please continue to put in your questions and thoughts on the chat as we go along. So you don't have to wait till the end to do that. And then we can keep weaving those in as we go along as well. And the invitation is, of course, to also notice how you're thinking about what you're thinking as we go along. So as Ashok and I speak, for example, you may have things you agree with, you may have things you disagree with, there may be certain things that trigger you. And all of that is okay and natural. And the invitation is to notice the process that led you to that agreement or that disagreement or that feeling or state of being triggered. So that's the continued invitation. And of course, as we go along, we are also looking to see how much more can we shape and structure this series. And yeah, so that it's still an evolving process, and we're looking forward to seeing what emerges over the course of time. So today we are exploring artificial intelligence as an idea, as a reality, as something that has already begun to reshape our world in many ways. And it's something that I have been also using in very deeply in my work to some degree, and also been involved in conversations around the ethics of it and what it means in terms of implication, not just from a policy perspective, but also anthropologically and so on. So it's been, a few different perspectives around AI that I continue to hold. If I have to think about I suppose one of the most pivotal points in human history when I think of it now, the launch of ChatGPT back in the end of 2023 was definitely a huge game changer. End of 23 or 22, I'm getting the year wrong perhaps. But it was definitely a game changer in the sense that to me, it felt like there was a huge sense of silence that started to creep in, because it felt like machines were speaking better than us to some degree. I remember that time when ChatGPT was just launched, and suddenly the nature and the quality of my LinkedIn feed entirely changed, and there were these very standard structured sort of posts that started appearing from a lot of people who I knew were not I knew that was not their natural language of writing and speaking, and so there was a sense of not knowing what exactly am I interacting with when posts were structured in a certain way. And And then, of course, it's continued and only deepened to a degree where now we are in a world where we don't quite know what is human created content and what is AI generated content, and it's all happening extremely fast. Once AI was perhaps a distant idea, maybe even a few years ago, but now it offers us language, it offers even what can be perceived as a sense of intimacy, even the illusion of care to a great extent, particularly for the younger generations. And of course, AI has been supporting people in terms of, finishing their sentences and emails and reports and so on. It's been replicating our art in many ways, and for all you know, it's also, anticipating what's coming for humanity even before we know it. But uh, when I think of it, what concerns me is not so much about what AI is doing as much as what we are allowing ourselves to become in response to AI. And so it's not so why we see a lot of posts around whether AI is good or bad, but to me, it's not so much about that as much as noticing what it reveals in terms of it's definitely satiating our uh, longing for precision in terms of language and structure and so on. It also caters to our sense of fatigue with ambiguity and the messiness of human life. But it's not just outsourcing of tasks, right? We are also, when utilizing AI, we're also outsourcing our discernment, our labor, our relationships as well. To some extent, we're hearing a little more and more cases around that. We're also outsourcing our imagination in some ways. So that's the discomfort I'm sitting with as I step into this conversation. Um, I don't think the attempt today between Ashok and me, I don't think it's about solving anything or even remotely mapping the impact of AI on us, but really asking what are we becoming in the presence of AI in our lives. So that's what I'm coming in with. And Ashok, I know you have a whole other stream of thought around this as well. So why don't you come in now?
Thank you, Rukmini. That was very comprehensive. I want to also say that it's very interesting that amongst the four of us, Vanmala, her work is almost completely using her hands. And that is a very unusual thing today. Being a potter, a ceramic designer, uh, I'm quite certain that AI will come into the picture. But of all the people, she is probably the most insulated for the moment. I know people like Nuno and me and you, Rukmini, we are facilitators, we are process designers, and a lot of our work is already being outsourced to and through AI. Uh, I remember in 19, no, in 2001, 2000 in Boston, there was already a company that started out of the Harvard program on negotiation called uh, virtual mediation or online mediation. So even the work that I was doing 25 years ago, but there were already attempts to try to make it and to remove the human factor. So when I look at, I know today's subject is AI, but I want to take a step back. I think we are not going to be able to understand what AI does unless we understand what technology itself does. And you used a term right in the beginning Rukmini, metacognition, and even if this group understands it, for people who watch this on video or on YouTube, I want to just spend a minute or two talking about what metacognition is. You see, we all respond to the world based on our reactions, emotional reactions, based on how we perceive what happens around us and what people say. Our normal focus is it good for me or is it bad for me? Do I like it or do I not like it? Do I agree with it? Do I not agree with it? That's the normal human way of engaging with things. And that doesn't make for intelligent thinking. If I agree with something, I have stopped thinking. If I disagree with something, I have stopped thinking. Because thinking requires me to step back from my personal, subjective reaction to ask fundamental questions. Why? How? What is this really? Is there something more than what I feel? So, metacognition, fancy word. And I apologize for introducing it here, but I can't think of a better word because in the field of critical thinking, they use this word metacognition to merely talk about how we are, uh, uh, as you can see, even in trying to explain a concept I've been familiar with for years, I have to be very careful. Metacognition is thinking about your own thinking process while you are thinking. To give an example, somebody who's been cooking a dish for 20, 30 years cooks automatically. You know how much of rice to put in, or vegetables, or meat, or chili powder, or turmeric, or garlic, or ginger. You're almost on autopilot. You're cooking, right? And it's a dish you know very well. Now, imagine the same cook who wants to be a little more creative. While putting the chili powder or while putting the garlic, they are they are able to consciously view their own minds as they are going about that process. It's a very crude example. But another example is when imagine we are talking to someone and they say something very offensive to us. We are conscious of the offense. Oh my God, how can you say that about Trump or Modi or Hinduism or whatever? I'm offended. Imagine if I could ask myself at that point, but Ashok, why am I getting so offended? In feeling so offended, am I not listening to what this person is saying? What is it in my own thinking process or my background that makes me so offended? Is there another way for me to look at this thing? So I'll stop here with the metacognitive definition because I'm hoping that over a period of time, through our conversations, we can actually get better at this. And here's the metacognitive aspect of artificial intelligence. It is only after ChatGPT and robotics before that that people suddenly started freaking out about, oh my God, this will take all our jobs away. Oh, it's only after social media became very popular that people suddenly said, oh my God, there are emotional costs. Our children are constantly on the phones. There's immense amount of bullying and depression taking place amongst young people in schools and colleges. People are committing suicide because of what's happening online. It is only when the problems of a particular technology hit us that we start questioning the technology. But there are people who, even at the time of the internet, I am talking in the mid 90s, warned us that the internet, for all the conveniences that it can give us, is basically going to destroy the ways in which human beings think, the ways in which we learn. Give an example. Why would I ask if I'm a student of 15 or 18, why would I sit in front of my teacher who is 35 or 55 years old to ask my teacher about any subject when I can Google it? And the odds are that Google will give a much better, more comprehensive answer than my 55-year-old teacher. Why would I go to my grandmother to talk to her and ask for her advice when I can go to the internet or even go to a professional therapist? We have been outsourcing our minds, our learning, and even our relationships to technology for a long time. Digital technology, particularly, going all the way to personal computers and the word uh, uh, and typing on a word processor. All of this changes the ways in which we relate to ideas, to concepts, and to each other. I'll give a example I often use. This goes way back to the Gutenberg's printing press. And because this is a small group, I can ask this question. Please tell me how you think the printing press affected society. You can either type, or this is a small group, just Vanmala or no, you can just unmute and just say, how do you think the printing press that designed by Gutenberg in the 1600s, or the 1600s or 1500s, I forget. How do you think it affected humanity and society?
I
Go on.
I think more people could get the same printout or the same information, knowledge, which because it was printed at one time and passed on to everybody. So it wasn't one person talking to so many. It was like it could go to places as well. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
transportation was also easy for the same information to reach.
Very good. Thank you. Any others? No.
Yeah,
Rukmini.
massification of knowledge, spreading it, building on it across generations, much easier than handwriting, right? I mean, enabled us to codify information, knowledge, events, history, and pass it on much more easily than before.
Absolutely. Anything else? What are the ways in which it affected our humanity, our relationships?
power centers also changed, right? Because before books could be disseminated, people who had knowledge held a lot of power, and now that was taken away.
The Brahmins or the priestly classes had enormous power because they were literate. And with the mass production of books, literacy itself spread. There was, in a way, the democratization of information. Right.
I guess there was also a bit of homogenization of information, right? I mean, with that spreading, people started thinking the same things that were in the books, as opposed to this very fragmented way of being humans, right? I mean, we had people everywhere being quite different culturally in terms of their values, their thinking processes, how their lives worked. It's a bit like the McDonald's is the new, in the recent decades was what was it doing to culture worldwide, right? The franchising of McDonald's, and now AI is a more extreme version of that, I guess, ChatGPT and so on.
Wonderful. This is great. And I want to add a couple more things to what the book did, the printed book, not the handwritten book. Everything you folks said was absolutely vital. And there is a fundamental difference between listening to a wise person, a knowledgeable person, and sitting around a campfire or in your home and listening to your parents or your grandmother or uncles and aunts and learning from them. The differences are as follows. The first thing is, it is based on a relationship you have with the author of the ideas. When your grandmother or uncle talks to you, they care about you. And they are taking the time to share their experience and their knowledge. This is completely lost in a book. The writer doesn't really know you, and in a way, cannot really care about you. So it's not an intimate process. One. The second thing is that when you are listening to your teacher, let's just say Plato or Socrates students, when the students are listening to Socrates, they are absorbing information through their ears. Their eyes are useful only to see the body language of the speaker. When information is processed through the ears, the body responds in a very instinctive and intimate way. The ear is, Marshall McLuhan called it a hot medium. Because when you hear, whether it's music or a speech, your body, the somatic reaction is very powerful, very powerful. When you read a book, you're not using your ears, you're using your eyes. And there are many processes that come into play here. If I look at a book written in Russian, I won't understand anything because the letters, I don't know how to decode those letters, the Cyrillic letters. But if it's written in English, my mind goes through quite a few gymnastic steps in order to make sense. If I read a letter like a line like, he went to the market, I'm not seeing him go to the market. I am putting together H and E, one word, WENT, and what is going through in my mind is a cognitive process of translating all these symbols into meanings and then absorbing it. In other words, Reading is an intellectual process. Hearing is an emotional process. This is radical in human evolution. Until the book became the ubiquitous, until the book became mainstreamed, our relationship with the world was instinctive, immediate, and intimate. Because words once spoken were gone. I couldn't hear the words again until Edison created the phonograph. But the book, the words are always there. This changed our relationship with knowledge. And when we talk, without the book, scientific revolution, the scientific revolution could not have happened. The Enlightenment, which privileged the individual and which privileged reason and critical thinking, could not have happened. So even 500 years ago, we started our evolution, our movement away from what we had in common with other species, the immediacy of existence. Immediacy. This meant we started becoming more detached from nature. We started becoming more detached from the tribe, our family, other people. I'll give you an example. For a range of reasons I don't want to go into. I was stuck once in 1981. I was stuck for 6 months in Kuwait for visa reasons. And I was staying with a North Indian family, friends of my parents, lovely people in a very small apartment. They loved Bollywood films. It was a one-bedroom apartment, just the husband and wife. I was sleeping on the couch. Every day, they would watch. I'm not exaggerating, on video, 5 to 7 Bollywood films. I was going crazy, and I tried getting books and reading them. I couldn't hide and read. I had to sit in the small living room while the Bollywood movie was going on. And this lovely lady, called her auntie. Auntie would say, Ashok, you're being very antisocial. Because this is the difference between her watching the movie and my reading my book. When she watched the movie, she would express her reaction to the movie, and her husband would. And if there was anyone else, they would all be laughing or making comments. When I read the book, I am the only person reading this particular book, and all my feelings are internalized. I was anti-social. And that is what the book does. Now, I say this because, as I said, we cannot understand artificial intelligence unless we understand what technology itself does. And I want to come back to Marshall McLuhan, who was a media theorist, and he died in 1980, a pretty eccentric guy. But this is his most powerful insight, which is that every technology, firstly, let me talk of technology. Every technology is an extension of one of our senses. My spectacles, it's a technology, are an extension of my eyes. The wheel is an extension of my feet. All technologies extend the human self. So, hold that thought. Now come to media. Firstly, McLuhan thought of media also as a technology. And he thought of technology as a media, because all technology allow us to mediate with the world. So for McLuhan, oral storytelling privileged the ears and the mouth, tongue. Reading privileged the eyes and cognition. And he he became famous before the personal computer revolution, before the internet was anywhere around. And he used to call all of this not digital. The word digital technology had not come. He called this world electric or electronic technologies. And for him, electronic technologies were an extension of the nervous system. This is, when you sit and think about it, this is mind-blowing. Now, let's come to artificial intelligence. Everything you folks talked about, artificial intelligence. No, actually, you talked about the book, but Rukmini talked about artificial intelligence. All of this is true. Already there's a company called Mechanics, which was featured in the New York Times just last week, which has said very clearly, we are going to try to automate every job on the planet with AI. At least they're being honest. Until now, AI, all the Silicon Valley geniuses kept telling us, no, 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 don't worry about your job. AI will make it easier for you to work. It will make you more creative. It will give you more leisure. But this company, Mechanics, is saying very clearly, our job is to automate everything. Now, that, and right now I don't want to go into, unless you want to talk about it, any of you, I don't want to go into the impact on all human society if most work that we are used to doing disappears and government gives us a salary for not working. They call it the universal income scheme, I think, which is, if productivity is so high, governments don't need us to work. So they'll give us money to stay at home or to go to Disney World. But leave that aside. Let's touch on what AI does. And I'm focused on 2 to 3 areas where AI will have a huge impact. The first is your mind. Your mind. The second is every relationship you have, not just with your spouse or your children, but with your neighbors, with your teachers, with your students, with your politicians, even with your mafia and criminals. The third is AI's impact on society itself. What will society mean if all those bonds between you and the chaiwala, you and the grocer, you and the person who delivers your packages, you and the waiter at the restaurant, you and your colleagues at work, all of those are changed. What is left of society? And if this happens to society, how can we ever have something called a democracy? What is the point of elections? What is the point of elected representatives? So there are so many vital questions that come up here. So I want, for a moment, I want all of us to just reflect and put down on chat. Actually, you know what? This is a small group. We don't. So, Vanmala and Nuno, why don't you just respond to, and I want a specific kind of a response. What is, and I'm trying to be a little metacognitive. What is, if you look at your mind as a landscape, there are many things in your mind, including what to eat for dinner, or your work tomorrow, whatever. There are so many things. But with regard to what we are talking about, what are the few things that are occupying your mind right now? Occupying your mind. No, Rukmini, think Vanmala has stepped out. Whenever she comes back, it's like if you walk into a room and you describe it. There's a red couch, there are flowers, there are two fans, there's an air conditioner. Just describe your mind right now.
Well, one very pragmatic thing I need to actually stand because a smell came to my senses. I'm cooking something and I need to switch off the oven. I'm sorry.
Of course, of course.
And I was forgetting about it because we were here. I was getting immersed in this. I'm sorry, I'm now back.
No problem. I hope it
At least
wasn't
it
burned.
didn't burn.
Good.
Okay,
So back.
but on these topics, I find this theme of implications of AI quite overwhelming because I think there are so many dimensions or ways to think about it, and I haven't been able to. Well, I think you mentioned start one of, I think, group meaning, maybe that is not our intention to find a solution here or to map all the implications. As I had an engineering training, so I like mapping things and trying to make sense of things, but also that limits also our thinking, right? I confess that maybe the dark cloud on this topic for me, connecting a lot with all these implications, is the reason for existence of humanity. I think I'm thinking, if AI goes the way it goes, which is quite unregulated, quite free, a kind of a arms race because everyone is trying to get the newest thing done, etc. At some point, it sounds like it's inevitable that technology will think, why do we need the humans, right? And the humans will be thinking, why do we exist? Why do we need ourselves, right? And I think there are many sci-fi stories or films with these dark scenarios. I think none I've seen. Actually, I'll share a mini story later. I'll have to find it from a short sci-fi author called Frederick Brown. Maybe you've heard of him. Not very well known, but very good with short stories. And I think it sounds to me that one day the machines will just think, actually humans don't do good to this world, we don't need them, and therefore humanity ceases to have a reason to exist, and maybe not even the conditions, because these universal basic income machines doing our work, they'll decide that no, we don't need to do humans work, we can do something else, right? I don't know, it's a bit sorry, not very structured, but it's a bit what's going on in my head these days. And also when I saw your invitation, Ashok, I thought, okay, what happens on Sunday? Can I be there at 3 p.m.? So here I am. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And I totally appreciate what's going on in your mind. And that's part of what we are trying to talk about. But Vanmala and Rukmini, if you can, Vanmala, when you had stepped out, I had asked a question. When you walk into a new room and you're asked to describe it, you talk of the color of the wall, you talk of the furniture, you talk of other people there, you talk about the temperature. So, given what I talked about AI and and technology itself and the senses, I want you to go back to your mind and look at your mind like a room. And if you can just describe what is existing in your mind after I said these things, what are the pieces of furniture in your mind after you heard me? Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, is a separate matter. This is an exercise in starting the process of metacognition, meaning, can we see how we think? So, Rukmini, would you like to, or Vanmala, would you like to go first?
Yeah, pardon.
Go on, go on.
Yeah, Rukmini, I'm okay. Okay. So my first thought, and which is what I have been thinking always as far as technology is concerned, it's helped us in a lot of ways. But when I see my grandchildren, I am actually scared. I'm scared of what life is going to be for them. I know it's going to be very different from what I have lived at that age and, the way I am right now. But yes, it's a very, very scary feeling for me, because if I am alive to see them grow up even to an age of 15 or 20, I mean, I don't think I'm going to be comfortable seeing them, and I'm not even comfortable imagining what it's going to be for them. And that's one of the reasons why I love taking them to the farm and to the studio. At least that's the time when they touch clay, and that's the time when they touch the soil. But it's an extremely, extremely scary feeling. I mean, I sometimes feel that they are worse than thieves. I mean, the AI and the technology, it's worse than thief. It's worse than a person who's going to cheat you. Because at least when when you see the person's expression, when you see the person's movement, or when you can, from his persona, you can make out what is about to happen. But when it is AI and technology, you have no clue whatsoever. So it's a very, very scary feeling for me, and I am not um, uh, I'm not really looking forward to any more technology in my life. It's like simple things like you want to take a photograph and your phone keeps saying, please clear the storage, I'm full. I mean, that's when you start feeling, I mean, it's a non-entity which is beginning to talk to you, and you can't do a thing about it. And that's what is extremely scary for me. I mean, I've reached a point where I'm willing to say I am done and over with this world. That's the kind of feeling I get. That's from me.
That's very powerful, Vanmala and I. The fact that you have grandchildren, you are actually expressing what for you is a fear. I hate to say this, but there are times I'm relieved I don't have grandchildren.
Yes, I agree. Yes,
Because I wouldn't know how to deal with them. Why
yes.
go there? And even before AI, my first cousins who are much younger than me. I think my closest first cousin is maybe 15, 17 years younger than me. And my nephews and nieces, they don't even know how to talk to me. They don't
Mm.
even know. 15 years ago, when I was in Bangalore, I invited my brother's son had come for an internship in Bangalore. I invited him to come for lunch to a restaurant. The whole restaurant, he must have been 23, 22. He sat with his phone. When the food came, he took a photograph of the food. And I was so excited to see him. He's my nephew. And he, other than answering monosyllabically, he could not have a conversation with me. Finally, I said, Rohan, I'm seeing you after years. You're my nephew. Why don't you have anything to say to me? He
Say,
said, what is there to say? And this is not, he's not into drugs, he's not into anything. He was was brought up in a very stable, loving home. Rukmini, your thoughts. Again, think of it in terms of your room, your mind as a room. What are the things that exist there right now?
Strangely, probably the biggest component in the room is probably excitement and anticipation in a good way, I suppose. Yes, there is concern for the short term in terms of how do we go through this transition. Uh, but yeah, the larger part of the territory is occupied by a sense of anticipation and one question looming large is should AI really take over most of our jobs, as it seems like it will right now? Have we been trained enough to have other aspirations beyond a profession? How will we reach out for what we aspire for, and where do we seek meaning in? Because it feels like most of the generations that are alive right now have been trained into this thing of seeking meaning through work, one way or another. So, and work has become equated to a profession or a career. So now, if work has to be divorced from a profession, what would that look like? And do we even know how to seek that? Would it be work in a spiritual sense of the term? Would it be artistic? Yeah, I mean, those are questions that are present.
Very interesting. I'm going to ask all of you, including me, to reflect for a moment and on chat, put down one or two questions that you think we should be talking about today. Questions, not reflections or thoughts, because part of the process of this conversation is to figure out how to ask the most powerful questions, the most meaningful questions, and to build a conversation around it. So I will also try to put down my question, but I'd invite all of you to put it in chat. Rukmini, would you please take on one of the questions and respond to it? Any that catches your interest? They're all really good questions.
And as I read through them, it feels like there's the it feels like what might emerge is really a deepening of the question more than a response to it. But Ashok, if I were to take up yours, for example, what would romantic love look like? I think that's already changing a lot, and I'm noticing a lot of conversations around this in my own circles. And I notice myself as a single person joking around with my friends saying, it's just so messy with human relationships. I'd rather wait for an Android boyfriend to happen because it's just easier that way. In the sense, you can get the good parts of the relationship without having to deal with the mess, right? And in some ways, therefore, yeah, the idea of what is romance in itself might be a question to ask now, because uh, we are already in an era where a lot of people are closer to their AI assistants than the human people around them. And so the nature of intimacy has already shifted. Right? So what does romance look like in an era like this, where we are maybe looking at possibilities of a, I'm not even sure if we can call it interspecies yet, but some inter something, right? That there's one part that's human and the other part which is some nebulous entity, and relationships are happening in that sphere. And so does the idea of romance even hold right now? I'm not really sure.
Thank you. I will take on Vanmala's question. And can the joint family system help? Nuno, are you familiar with what a joint family system is? It's a very
No.
Indian term. So you're familiar with the nuclear family, right? And the nuclear family is father, mother, children. Now, India has always had a joint or extended family system, which means multiple generations, including uncles and aunts, lived under the same roof. Okay. And that until about, I want to say, 70 years ago, just before I was born, most Indian families were joint families, except in the metros, the cities, where people housing was difficult. And if you went for a job to Mumbai or Delhi, you were forced to live in a small place, small house, and with only the parents and children and maximum a grandparent or so. But the traditional Indian family, and I want to say most African, Arab, Latino families were joint families. In fact, and in Malayalam, my language, there is no word for cousin. There was only brother and sister. You see, because cousin meant you were differentiating between yourself and your aunt's or uncle's children. And that wasn't necessary. You were just part of this joint structure. And I, at the risk of venturing towards problem solving, because we said we wouldn't solve problems, but since Vanmala asked this question, I think it's very important. There are times I believe the only salvation for humanity is going back to a tribal structure. That what the kind of lives we live today, whether it's in Washington, D.C., or Lisbon, or France, or Mumbai, or wherever, where we are individual autonomous beings trying to create a life for ourselves within a physical space, our apartments, even if we are rich enough to have an independent home with 2 to 3 people living in it. This makes us completely vulnerable to technology and capitalism. Capitalism and technology are completely interwoven, and one feeds off the other. And they are both completely dependent on the breaking down of the tribe. So, yes, and I don't think most of us would be comfortable living in a tribal or even joint family system anymore, because we know that our individuality will be compromised. We know that we will not have the freedoms, the rights even, to be different from the tribe. But as an answer to the largest question, how can we survive? And I want to connect to Nuno's question. As an author, not spectator or victim of my life, what and how should I be thinking, doing about this transition in humanity? My response, my tentative response is this. If you really want to have agency, you have to stop the transition. If you go with the transition, you are a mere bystander, or you are even culpable of accelerating the transition. Because there is no good way in which this story can end for humans. Don't get me wrong. For the people who control the resources, control, if it's possible for the richest people on the planet to control AI, control the systems that AI creates, control all jobs, all recreational facilities, and give us the universal income and put us in our cubbyhole apartments and make sure that we do not riot, we do not create problems. Except for those people, the rest of us are going to be completely disenfranchised. When you say, Rukmini, that perhaps, and I get the idea that relationships are messy and that perhaps an android boyfriend or girlfriend that is programmed to really be compatible with you would remove the mess. I can assure you that's coming. It will be in the market in the next 10 years. And in 20 to 30 years, nobody in their right minds will get into a relationship with another human, because we humans are messed up. Vanmala, you have been married for how many years?
43.
43. I have been with Stacy for almost 10 years. And I think, and Nuno is also, Nuno, how long have you been married?
Not formally married, but together for 20 years.
Perfect. together for 20 years. I think the three of us, and maybe in your previous relationships, Rukmini, we know we have had to do somersaults in order to keep the marriage or relationship going. We've had to change. And there are times when even now, I wonder who I married and why. It's messy. It's almost a train wreck. And yet, it's the foundation of everything that makes us human. And here's what I worry about. If not for my very messy relationships, including with my parents, my siblings, my cousins, my friends, my girlfriends, and now my wife, if not for those, I would today be a shell of a person. I have suffered like crazy. My heart has been broken, crashed, stomped over so many times, not just romantically, in relationships with family members. And yet, the only thing that keeps me human is not my knowledge, is not my critical thinking capabilities, is not the work I do. And my work has to do with human beings. I don't work in a factory. I don't write code. As a mediator, as a facilitator, I work intimately with people. But that's not what makes me human. What makes me human is the beating I have taken in trying to keep my relationships alive. And if that goes back to, no, your question, what does it mean to be human anymore? So we've about little more than 20 minutes. I want to just hear from the two of you first, and then Rukmini. What's going on in your mind? How are you processing this? Whoever wants to talk, not just about your fears, but what are the thoughts that are floating around in your mind? Because you've been very patient for more than an hour. I want to hear. I want to see inside your mind.
See, whatever you've talked today or whatever we've discussed, it's something which is always at the back of the mind, that yes, this is happening. A lot of times it does get into the work also, because the way people use and like, I'll just give you one incident. I have right now an intern from Telangana. He doesn't know English because he's doing sculpture as a major, but his father is a farmer and he doesn't understand too much English. So our communication is a problem. So every time I have a question, I write it in English and I tell him, get it translated from your Google or whoever. And he does that, and that's how we are communicating. So we've already filled about 5 pages of that long book. I'm asking him in English, he's answering. He's understanding it in his language and then answering. So I'm not saying that technology is bad, because here it is helping us. But at the same time, I feel that he is understanding what I'm asking, but he's not understanding my emotion. Because when I have to say good, I have to give him a smile, which means, so ultimately, whatever technology or anything, or I have to pat his back saying, okay, this is good, or I have to say no. So it's, like whatever happens, technology is helping, but it's still not the same. And I mean, I am basically, maybe because of my age or how I have been brought up or what I'm doing today, I am scared. That's the, I mean, and I really don't know whether any of the hand skills are going to survive anymore. So, I mean, one can already see the transition happening. People are not interested. And any hand skill, I'm not just talking about art, I'm talking about agriculture, food, any kind of even repair works. Like earlier, even if a hook or a hem came out of my dress, we would do it at home. I will still do it, but my own daughters will either pass it on to me, say, Mama, please finish it, or get this done, or they'll go to a tailor and give it. So we really don't know what is happening and how it's all going to end up. So for me, it's a very scary zone. That's it. And I am willing to accept it as it comes and use it positively in my own way. But if I can't, I can't. That's it. Acceptance
Vanu,
is the only way.
yeah, Vanu, you're from Rajasthan, right? Originally?
Yes. Yes.
Do you, how much of, how many of your extended family, cousins, uncles, aunts, how many of them live in joint families in Rajasthan now?
My own first cousins still live in a joint family. My own daughters still live in a joint family in Bombay.
Wow. Wow.
And my elder one had her great grandmother also living with her, who was 105-year-old, who passed away only 2 years back.
Wow.
And I see a lot of comfort in that house because and that's why I again say joint family, I feel, is the only answer for humans if they want it, because technology has definitely taken over. And I'm not saying that they don't use technology, they all
Of
use
course.
technology, but I still feel that they have a lot of what should I say, the emotional balance is quite intact at this moment, at least, because of the joint family system. Because when the children come back from home, they know somebody is there. If my mother's not there, my grandmother's there, my grandfather's there, the other people, maids, etc. So the house is full. They are not coming to an empty house. They're not going to a crash. So I am a absolute, um, the kind of person who is fully, totally for joint family. It need not be your own parents, need not be your own, but just maybe three friends living together and looking after the children. So it can be anything. It could be two neighbors whose children are together during the day, so they're not lonely. Even people, when you go, like I have so many people who are single students, younger, much younger, 20, 30 years younger, but they will come to the studio, sit, chat, just hang around. And I sometimes I wonder why. And then I know that, even if they go back home to who? So
This is, hearing you say this is so important. And I'll be honest, if you had said this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have completely rejected it because it would have been an infringement of my freedoms, you
right.
know? But now, and in a very funny way, uh, it is after my recent shift to the US. I say recent because it's the second time in 2017 that I came here. And I have watched American society completely disintegrate. And suddenly I now realize it's not just society, American democracy is gone. People like to
Yeah.
blame Trump. Trump has nothing to do with it. We destroyed society. And so someone like Trump comes and does whatever he wants. So I am inclined to agree with you, Vanu, that if not the only, at least one possible way out of this is the joint family, the tribe. I will call it the tribe. Uh, I just don't know how feasible it is for most people anymore. I'm reminded of people like the Quakers, the Amish, who live in tribes, and they don't marry from outside, and they are very selective about the technology that they use, and they are thriving. They are thriving. No, what's again? Observe the furniture in your room, the intellectual, the conceptual, the emotional furniture in your room. What is there? Describe to us what's in your room.
Trying to do something metacognitive here. I wonder, I don't feel scared, and I wonder if I'm comfortable because life right now, if I'm being too short-termist, I think Rukmini said that you're positive about the long term, you're unsure about the transition, right? And I think I'm the opposite. I'm like right now, and in the near future, and maybe I'm not seeing enough. It seems difficult to be get very uncomfortable, which also goes back to, I think maybe Ashok mentioned that we only feel that something is important when we are affected by it, right? It's been my dream over the last few years, I don't know how many, to get out of my job, right? To make myself obsolete and find ways that what I do can be done by people themselves and through a book. I think Ashok may know that I published a book last year on negotiations and things like that. And I think on that, technology is promising a lot, right? And AI, let's think about ChatGPT to simplify things. And I think there's a lot more to discuss. But ChatGPT has a lot of potential that I'm positive about in the short term. Things like helping people who don't have access to decent education. I lived, Ashok knows, for 8 years in Timor-Leste, for instance, in East Timor. Lack of good teachers, people finish high school, finish undergrads with very poor education. And I'm like, why don't we just start a kind of a companion or a mini school, a mini university based on technology, computers and ChatGPT, and helping a facilitator to help people learn. So I'm very positive about lots of the short-term potentials. And then I'm a bit, I don't know if scared, because maybe I'm putting that so far away that I'm not going to be suffering directly a lot from it, but I'm scared about the long-term future, like, is there going to be humans in 100 years? I don't know. Maybe my scale is in 50 years, maybe in 50 years I'm still alive. I don't know. I could live long. You never know when you die. But so, and I wonder if I'm being lazy about my thinking, right? So if I'm just comfortable right now, so let's, make good use of the positives and not be too scared about the long-term effects. I think, Ashok, you mentioned before, the only way to be an author, not to be a victim or bystander, is to not to contribute, or I don't know exactly what you said, but not to play along with the transition, right? So,
Yes.
and yeah, and I question myself, is it using, for instance, using ChatGPT, is that contributing in a bad way to a bad transition? Maybe it is. So far, I haven't thought it's bad enough that it overcomes the positives of using it. Yeah, it's complex, and I think having a more of a metacognitive approach can be useful, so that I can understand how I'm thinking about what I'm thinking.
Right. Exactly. I'd like to ask you folks a question. When you look at your world, meaning the people you care about, who are the people who you think would most benefit from artificial intelligence? People you care about. And who are the people you care about that would be negatively influenced by artificial intelligence? Anyone?
See, my worry always is along, say, agriculture. We never find people who are willing to till your land with you. So, fine, there'll be a machine which will do the work for you. But even for the machine to do the work, you need to give them a base, right? Like, say, suppose the 1 acre land has to be tilled, and it may have contours and it may have a little valley and a pit. If the technology or the machine or what AI or whatever, whoever can help, if they can sense that and work accordingly, then good. If they can't, then some human has to give a flat land to them. So if AI can do all that for you, very good. Which means who is going to produce the food?
Right.
That also means that the humans are out of the picture then.
Yeah.
The AI will do it. Somebody who owns the AI or somebody who can work with or for AI will handle all that. So what is the kind of food that we are going to get? How is it going to
Yes.
be produced? Are we going to stop cooking? Will we get ready-made food? So is the AI going to help us to that level? And if that is the case, then so many jobs have gone in between. Because somebody who tills the land, somebody who grows, somebody who waters, somebody who's finally going to harvest and then pack and whatever, all that whole chain will go. So you don't need to really do anything. You go back to 10,000 years back when you would just sit. If it rains, get into the cave. If it is hot, sit under the tree. And if you're hungry, try eating anything that is available, leaves or flowers or whatever. You eat. If it is compatible to your body, you survive. If it is not, you die because it's poisonous. So are we
You
going to
know,
go to?
you have just described New York. You have just described New York. Most people I know do not cook.
Hmm,
They don't
yeah,
cook
yeah.
because everything is already ready-made, processed.
Hmm,
And uh, we have become hunter-gatherers again.
yes, yes.
And when you talk about that whole chain, the supply chain, people who do things, it's one thing that that supply chain disappears
Yeah.
because Western countries, most agriculture is mechanized. Even before AI
Hmm,
came, mechanized, huge mechanical systems. Uh, but here's the thing: every skill that, including the skill of tilling the land, planting the seeds, reaping the harvest, they taught us something. We are human because of the work we do. If you take that work away, it's like, I mean, one conversation maybe we should have later, Vanmala, is I'm very curious how you're working with your hands for 40 to 50 years as a potter and as an
hmm.
organic farmer. I'm very curious about how that has changed your mind or kept your mind the way it was 40 to 50 years ago. Because you are pardon the expression, but you are a freak for me. Nobody I know uses, has spent her whole life using her hands. So that's a future conversation, Vanu, because that is a radical departure from everything that AI promises us. Rukmini, actually, you can go last. Nuno, uh, Anything else to add? Anything else to add?
You were asking who is benefits, who is more
Yes,
negatively affected, right?
Thank you.
I think technology in general, I see that the elderly are often, or the elder people, not necessarily elderly already, older people get more easily affected negatively by transitions in technology. I see my dad complaining about getting things electronically when he prefers paper, having to go online to do something when he likes to talk to a person and get things done. And it can be very unfair, there can be lots of exclusion by, well, then this is maybe about policies and how we run the world, but when younger people make decisions, oh, this is much more efficient, why should we have all these things happening? And then we're excluding part of us, humankind, right? So I think it's easier that there is this bias in general, and generalization here, older people being more negatively affected, younger people adopting and thinking, this is great, fantastic, let's use it, right? This can be very shallow, very superficial, but it's very real, I think, especially for those affected, that they feel, they're out of society very easily.
Thank you so much. Rukmini, your thoughts and wrap it up.
I think my responses to the question you asked are more or less the same as what you said, so I'm not repeating that. But I do want to pick on what you said earlier about resisting the transition. And in my mind, I don't even see that as a possibility. In the sense that if we were to look at human history and evolution, we have always had a distaste for labor. And I don't only mean physical labor, but also emotional and mental and spiritual labor in any form. And therefore, the idea of creating technology as an extension of ourselves has been an evolutionary impulse against that labor, which we find distasteful, right? So we've created physical technology and spiritual technology and social technology and all of that as we've gone along, right? So I don't think I don't think we can stop that evolutionary impulse. It's hard coded in us because we don't like labor, right? And now we are at a stage where we are dealing with the possibility of maybe doing away with the labor involved in messy relationships, the labor involved in being citizens of a democracy, and so on. And the technology that we are developing is providing a way out, and why not? Right? What is the resistance to the transition really serving? What are we looking at preserving here? Because, yeah, honestly, if you were to think back, I don't have an answer to what are we wanting to preserve by resisting. So it really feels natural to move from being human to being transhuman in whatever form or shape that it takes. One possibility is that we learn to merge with technology, and in the way things are going, that looks like a very realistic possibility right now, that we move away from being a biochemical organism to being a biotechnological organism, and that perhaps might be a way to preserve humanity as we know it. Because, yeah.
Wow. And you've alluded to this a few times in the past, but this is the first time you have really articulated that very well. So thank you for that. And uh, that is the most disturbing thought that I have heard in weeks. And I'd love the idea of talking about for another session on transhumanism. You and I have talked about it. Because for me, unlike you, I know what I want to preserve. I have no questions about the value that is being lost, not just by AI, but by all technologies. Where I do agree with you is I don't know how it can be stopped. So I have no illusions that this rush to artificial intelligence can be stopped. But I have no doubts at all that it would be completely disastrous for anything that we even remotely consider to be human. On that note, I see that Nuno has gone. He must have had a hard stop, as they say. Vanu, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your very thoughtful and honest responses. And if you can tell people, your friends, about MindWatch, we would love to have more people join us. Okay?
Okay.
Awesome. You take care of yourself
Yes.
and hug your grandchildren for me.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Chalo.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.